holiday of Tu B'Av, the Jewish holiday for weddings and for celebrating weddings. So I have a story about a very interesting and quite a miraculous wedding. And the story is about a young man named Motel. His real name was Mordechai, but everyone just called him Motel for short. And Motel would sit all day long and learn Torah in the yeshiva. He was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. We've had a few stories this year about the Maggid of Mezrich. Anyone have the card of the Maggid of Mezrich? Wow, so many of you have it. Right. I think he's part of the red series of cards. Excellent. Okay, so now you know who I'm talking about. So this was one of his students. And Matel used to say, I don't have a father and mother. I'm an orphan. I barely have any food to eat. I don't even have a copper penny to my name. No one's ever going to want to marry me. I'll just sit and learn Torah all day long. And that's what Motel Sitton did. And one by one, all his classmates were getting older, and they went and they found a girl and they got married. Whilst Motel was getting older and older, and all he was interested in doing, because he didn't think any girl would want to marry him because he has no money, he sit and learn Torah, and he became an excellent Torah student, and he was kind and nice. His only shortcoming was that he had no money because he had no parents. And all day he just sat and learned Torah. And he became a great Talmid Chacham. Well, his Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich, came to him and he said, Motel, you know, there's a big mitzvah to get married. It's wonderful you want to sit and learn Torah, but as great as learning Torah is, it's not as great as sitting as getting married. There's no greater mitzvah than getting married and starting a new Jewish family. Hashem doesn't want us to sit all day long and just learn. Hashem wants us to make this world into a dira lo yitbarach v'tachtanim, a dwelling place down in this physical world. You need to go get married. Oy, Rebbe, who'll ever want to marry me? I don't have a single kopek to my name. Mustn't think like that, Motel. You're a very fine young man, one of the best students in my yeshiva. All you need to do is go and make the effort to find a wife, and Hashem will do the best. I want you to leave the yeshiva and go out into the world. And the first girl who agrees to marry you, first nice Jewish girl, say, yes, I'll marry you. Oh, all right, Rebbe, if that's what you want. And so Motel went out into the world. And he'd go from village to village and from townlet to townlet. And kind Jewish people would see a young yeshiva bacher with tattered, schmattery clothing and looking like a real mess, and his hair was all frazzled. And they took a lot of pity on him. And they would always offer him food to eat, and that's how he survived. He never liked to beg, but people offered him, or he'd politely knock on the door or something, and the Jewish people were always very kind. They would share food with him. One night, poor Motel was walking and walking, and it looked like the night was endless. He couldn't see any end in sight. Where was he? Out in the wilderness, traveling from one village to the next. But he couldn't find, he lost his way, and he was famished, misken. All of a sudden, far out in the distance, he saw a light. And he got so excited. And he said, oh, thank you, Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Please, Hashem, help that light is a place where Jews are. I really need food. And to his delight, he found that it was a Jewish village, actually bigger town, wasn't such a small village, it was quite a big town. And the first house he came across was a huge, beautiful mansion. And he thinks, well, such a palace, I'm sure this doesn't belong to a Jew. Yes, darling, what is it, sweetie? Yeah, I did, not this year. I did say it before. And Motel looks at the door, and to his delight, there's a mezuzah. And he thinks, oh, Baruch Hashem, thank you so much. And he knocks on the front door. And the butler comes to the door and he says, "Oh, good evening, young man. Oh, the owner, Yisachar, him and his wife are out tonight. Only his daughter Hannah is home. But I know they'll want us to feed a nice yeshiva boy. Come around to the servants' entrance and we'll give you something to eat." So Motel said, Baruch Hashem. And he comes around to where all the servants are sitting. They're all sitting and eating. They're all incredibly bored. The owner of the house with his wife, Yisachar, had gone off to a wedding. And they were sitting there. We never get invited to any weddings. We're just the servants. Wish we had a wedding to go to. "Hey, young man, Yisachar told us we should always feed nice yeshiva bacharim, yeshiva boys. Come, we'll get you a plate to eat." And they were very kind to him and they brought him a plate to eat. And they looked at his schmattery clothing and they thought him to be somewhat of a simpleton. They thought, can't be very clever boy. Look at the way he's dressed. Now children, they were foolish. You don't judge a person by the way they dress. Just because a person doesn't have fancy clothes doesn't mean that he's a foolish person or he's not clever. Maybe he just doesn't have money to buy nice clothes, like in the case of Motel. And he said, "Hey, young man, what brings you so far away from the yeshiva?" "Oh, I'm looking for a wife to get married. I want to get married." And the head cook thinks, hey fellows, let's play a nice trick on this man. Why don't we have some fun? We really wanted to go to this wedding. I know, me too. So sad we didn't go. Well, let's ask him if he seems like such a simple, foolish guy. Let's ask him if he wants to marry Hannah, the girl upstairs, Yisachar's daughter, the big rich girl. Oh, you think she'll go up, play along with the joke? Sure she will. Come on, I'll go call her. And they went and they called Hannah. And they said, "Come on, Hannah." They were all her servants. But she was a young 16-year-old. She was bored too. She wasn't invited to the wedding. And they said, "Hannah, we're very bored. There's this simple boy downstairs. Poor simple boy. And he says he wants to get married. You up for playing a bit of a joke? Let's tell him you want to marry him and we'll make a pretend wedding ourselves. And we'll have lots of fun. And then maybe we can even get to celebrate with some of your father's kiddush wine." "Oh, you know what? I'm sitting in my room so bored. Why not? Sure, I'll join along and I'll play along with this funny joke." And they go to Motel. And they say, "Hey, Motel, so I heard you want to get married." And he said, "Oh, yes, I do." "Well, you know what? Hannah, the daughter of Yisachar, the owner, she's a very good, nice girl. She's 16. She wants to get married. Want to meet her, maybe? How about if the two of you get married?" "I don't mind meeting her. Highly doubt she'll want to meet me, though. I'm a yasaim. I'm like a yatom. I'm an orphan. I don't have any money or family." "Oh, Hannah is a good girl. She wouldn't care. We'll introduce you to her." And they bring Hannah in. And Hannah comes. And all the servants are there. And one of the servants pretends to be the shadchan, like the matchmaker. And she says, "Okay, I'm the matchmaker. So, I'll bring Hannah. We'll set up a quick 5-minute date. You agree to go on only a 5-minute date?" "Well, that's rather short." "Oh, come on. She's a very good girl, I promise you." "Well, all right." So they bring Hannah. And Hannah and Yisachar sit and talk a few minutes. And sorry, I'm calling him Yisachar, I meant Motel. And Motel realizes she's a really good Jewish girl. She knows how to keep Torah and mitzvot. And he says, "You sure you would consider marrying a man like me?" "Oh, yes, of course I would. Let's get married. Right here and now. Let's make the wedding now." "Now? It seems rather soon." "Oh, no, let's make the wedding right now. Now, Children, Motel wouldn't have done the wedding right there and then. But he remembered what his Rebbe taught him. The first girl who agrees to marry you, marry her. And this Hannah seemed to want to marry him right there and then. So he said, well, problem is, to marry you, I would need to own something of value like a ring. I don't own a ring. And so Hannah runs upstairs to her bedroom and she brings out a beautiful ring, one of her rings. She says, here, I'll give you my ring as a present and then you can marry me with it. So Motel was a big Talmid Chacham. He understood how you're supposed to do it. So he had witnesses come and see that he received the ring as a present, and now the ring belonged to him. He had the ring, it belonged to him. And he said, well, in order to make a wedding, we need to write a proper ketuvah. And all the servants said, sure, whatever you need. We'll bring paper and parchment and ink and everything. And Motel was a big Talmid Chacham. Sits down and he writes what's called the ketuvah. Children, in Jewish religion, very important that when we get married, the husband has to give the girl, I have a picture of a wedding, but the ketuvah is actually Hebrew writing, where the husband has to give the girl a contract promising to take care of all her needs, such as that he'll make sure she's got clothes to wear and food to eat and she's treated like a queen and all her needs are taken care of. We don't just give a Jewish girl and say, okay, go make a house together with someone and live with whoever you want. We don't do that. In Judaism, every Jewish girl is a princess. And as a princess, she needs to be treated as such and she needs to be very respected. And when we make a wedding, there has to be a whole wedding contract called the ketuvah. Darling, can we take comments at the end, sweetie? It's called the ketuvah. Now, the simple servants didn't know how to write a ketuvah, but Motel did. He was a big Talmid Chacham. And he writes the ketuvah carefully, exactly. He said, I need 2 witnesses. And they said, sure. Each one of the servants came. One of them came dressed up as a clown, all excited for the event. And he says, I'll be a witness. And Motel tested him a little bit, checked to see that he'd be a kosher witness. And he was, he go, okay, you're one witness. And he found another one of the servants. And he said, okay. And the chef is another witness. And he said, okay, now we need girls, it's disturbing, sweethearts. Now we need a chuppah. So they said, okay, we'll bring 4 broomsticks. And they brought 4 broomsticks and an old tablecloth. And they set up a whole chuppah. And Motel said, okay, come. And Hannah, who thought the whole thing to be a really nice, funny joke, ran and put on a pretty white dress that she had, and she attached a veil to her face, and she came dressed in a pretty white gown that she had, and everyone was so excited, all the servants were so jovial, and they said, look, we can also make a fun wedding. And Hannah shows up in the pretty white dress, and they come under the chuppah, and Motel covers her face with a veil, the way a chatan is supposed to cover his wife's face. And he says the words you have to say, Harei at mekudeshet li betabat zo kedat Moshe veYisrael, which means you now are holy to me, become kadosh. A married woman becomes even more holy, even more kadosh. And she's kadosh for her husband. And he put the ring on her finger. And he smashed the glass. And everybody screamed, Mazel Tov! Everyone was so excited. And they brought out all musical instruments. And everybody was singing and dancing and running around. The men were singing on one side of the room. And the women on the other. Simin Tov, Mazel Tov. And they brought out some delicious wine. And they gave Motel a little more to eat. And at the end of the night, they were all exhausted. They came to Motel. And they said, okay, Motel, you've had your meal. And we've had our fun. Now it's time for you to leave. The master will be home soon. He won't like this mess in the kitchen. We have to clean up. And Motel said, leave? What do you mean leave? Well, come on. The game is over. And he said, what game? This isn't a game. I married Hannah. She's my wife. I'm not leaving her. And the servant said, oh, come on, don't be ridiculous. It was a big joke. We were just having a fun mock wedding. And Motla said, maybe it was a joke to you, but I married her, and I married her properly, according to Torah and Halacha. And no way am I leaving my wife. So the servants got very angry, and they said, come on, fellows. Went after the other. They picked up poor Motl by his hands and his feet. 1, 2, 3, whoosh! And basically, physically, threw him out of the house. Oh, poor Motl was stuck outside the house. He didn't care to be outside in the cold, but he was very concerned because Hannah was now what's called an Eshet Ish. She's married according to Halacha, according to Torah, to him, and she may not marry another man. It's a big, big, big Avera, God forbid, for a married woman to go and marry another man who's not her husband. And here she had her husband, Motl, but she doesn't realize it. She thinks it was a whole joke. So he sits outside the palace, and he waits and he waits. A beautiful carriage comes, and out of the carriage, Alliance comes out. Rabbi Yisachar and his wife. And they've come out of their chariot, out of their wagon, and suddenly they see a poor fellow sitting on their doorstep. And Yisachar says, oh, poor chap, he must be a hungry yeshiva boy. Oh, I'll wake up the servants and tell them to feed him something. But before he could even open up his mouth to invite Motl inside to come and eat, Motl goes, good evening, father-in-law. And he goes, oh, poor dimwit, this boy's completely crazy. He thinks I'm his father-in-law. He goes, okay, young man, come on, I'll get you something to eat. I'll wake the servants. Yisachar was very kind. And Motl says, oh, no, father-in-law, I'm not hungry at all. The servants already fed me during my wedding to your daughter Hannah. And Yisachar thinks, how do you know my daughter's name? 1 minute, how do you know my daughter's name? And he said, well, I married Hannah this evening. And he thinks, this must be a total dunce head. It must be misken, a very confused young man who's not well in his head. Chas v'chalila. He must have heard about my daughter Hannah. Well, you know what, young man? I'll find a doctor to help take care of you. But Motl says, no, father-in-law, I'm perfectly sane and well. The servants thought they were making a mock wedding, but actually I really married your daughter Hannah. And he pulls out the ketubah. Although he was supposed to give it to her, he did give it to Hannah. She didn't bother taking it. And all of a sudden, the father-in-law begins to realize, this boy isn't so dumb. He sounds like he's making sense. And he grabs the ketubah and he looks at it and he's completely dismayed. And he holds his head and he goes, Oi, Ribono Shel Olam, what kind of stupid joke went on tonight? This doesn't look like a fake ketubah. Maybe he didn't own a ring or something. And he runs upstairs and dashes into the house and he wakes up Leah. Sorry, I'm calling her Leah. Hannah, sorry. He wakes up Hannah and he says, Hannah, what went on tonight? What happened? She goes, the servants and I, we had such fun tonight. There was this poor dimwit, this real poor chap. He had no money and he was hungry and he was looking for a wife. So we played a little joke and we made a mock wedding. And the father started to question her. He goes, what kind of mock wedding? I see a ketubah. And he says, well, yeah, the boy, he's a yeshiva boy. He knew how to write a ketubah. Well, what about a ring? Obviously, he didn't have a ring to give you to marry you. And she said, oh, he didn't. But I gave him my ring as a present. And then he said some Hebrew jumble-mumble words that I didn't understand. And he put them on my finger. And, well, I did kind of understand. It was something to the effect that he was making me holy and marrying me according to the laws of Moshe and Israel. And the father said, oh, no, that wasn't a mock wedding. That was a real wedding. Oh, I can't believe it. How did my rich, gorgeous princess of a daughter marry this foolish, pauper of a boy? Oh, I'm going to go offer him some money and get rid of him. So, Rabbi Yisachar ran to his safe and pulled out 10 rubles and he said, listen, young man, everyone would just poke fun at us that my daughter married such a poor chap. Here you go. I'll give you 10 rubles. We'll keep this a secret. Come with me right now to the house of the local rabbi, and you write my daughter a get. A get is a bill of divorce, which means they're not married anymore. And Motel says, no, I don't want your 10 rubles. I want my wife. I want Chana. And now Yisachar was getting more and more angry. He says, don't be a fool. Why would my daughter ever want to marry the likes of you? Look at you, you're all wearing shmata clothing. No way, come on, I'll give you 20 rubles. And Rabbi Yisachar kept offering more and more money. But Motel wasn't interested. He said, father-in-law, really, I just was looking for a wife, and I see that Chana is such a good girl. She agreed to marry me, and I married her. And he goes, no way, you're not foolish, you're sly, and you're tricky. Can't believe a yeshiva boy would do such a thing. And Motel said, no, I didn't do it to be sly. I did it to follow the instructions of my Rebbe, the Maggid. He said, you know what? Let's go talk to this Maggid of yours. Let's go talk to the Rebbe. And Reb Reuven, together with Chana, traveled that very night to the Maggid of Mezrich, to the city of Mezrich where the Maggid was. And he comes storming into the Maggid's office. And he's like, can't believe what one of your students did. While I was away, he made a joke wedding, but it wasn't a joke. He actually really married my daughter according to Chuppah and Kedushim, according to all the Jewish laws. And now my daughter is an Eshet Ish. She means she has a husband. She belongs to a man, to him, and then we don't want him as a husband anymore. And the Maggid tells him, listen, I know Motel since he was a little boy. He's one of the finest students in my yeshiva. Truly, you couldn't get a better boy. He's the smartest and the kindest. You should be very happy that she married him. And Rabbi Yisachar said, oh, come on, I'll be the laughing stock of the entire town that my daughter married a boy dressed in shmatas? Absolutely not. I wanted to give her a man of proper stature, with money and importance, not some unknown yeshiva bacher. And the Maggid said, okay, if you really want, I'll tell him to give Chana a get, a divorce. But you have to give him 2,000 rubles as compensation. And the Sachar says, 2,000 rubles? That's a lot of money. I can't believe it. I mean, sure, I'm very rich, but still, that's highway robbery. And the Maggid says, no, listen, give him 2,000 rubles and leave him alone for 6 months. And I promise you, if after 6 months, you still don't want him as a husband for Chana, I'll find you another boy who is very rich and has 2,000 golden rubles himself, and he'll marry Chana. And in this way, you won't lose any money. And Yisachar had no choice and counted out 2,000 rubles, and he said, we'll be back in 6 months to get the get. And keep this a big secret. I don't want anyone to know that Chana is married to this poor boy. And Rabbi Yisachar and Chana leave and go back to their village. 2 more minutes. Go back to their village, and they wait the 6 months out. Now, during the 6 months, children, the wife of the Maggid of Mezrich starts to take care of Motel. And she buys him new gorgeous clothing, and she feeds him well so that he doesn't look so gaunt and so skinny and hungry. And she sends him to the dentist who cleans and whitens his teeth and makes him look handsome. And she sends him to the barber who gives him a decent haircut and makes him look very nice and puts him into beautiful, nice clothing. I had a fancy hat for him, which I lost. Okay, never mind. And they bought him a nice new hat, and they made Motel look like a truly strapping prince of a fellow. Really nice looking guy now. Okay, I don't have his fancy hat, it's funny. Okay. And now Motel looked like a different person. You couldn't tell it was the same person. He looked really, really handsome and nice. And he was dressed in the most bejeweled, beautiful clothing. He looked like a very rich young man. After 6 months, Yisachar and Hannah come back. And he says, okay, Hannah, at least we'll get rid of that poor boy, that poor powerful boy, and we'll find you another rich boy to marry. And Hannah says, oh, okay, thank you, Daddy. And they walk into the Maggid's office, and sitting there as his secretary is none other than Motel himself. But they don't recognize him. And he says, good afternoon, can I help you? And they said, we have an appointment with the Maggid. And he says, no problem, let me get you something to drink while you wait. And he serves them some drinks and some pastries while they wait. And the father-in-law thinks, oh, what a fine young man, so polite and so handsome, and dressed so well too. Oh, I wonder who he is. And they wait a few minutes, and the Maggid lets them in. And they come to the Maggid and they tell the Maggid, right, we want a get. We don't want Hannah to stay married to Motel. And the Maggid says to them, oh, where am I? Sorry. You sure you don't want to stay married to Motel? And Hannah said, well, my daddy said I shouldn't stay married to him. No, I don't want. Even though he's a very nice boy. Yeah. Better he should give me a get. So he said, okay, I'll call another boy. Did you notice the boy sitting outside Mordechai? He's a really, really good boy. He's the best student in my yeshiva. And he has 2,000 rubles. He's very, very rich. Did you like him? And she thinks, well, he certainly made a very favorable impression on me. And the father says, oh yeah, I noticed Mordechai sitting outside. Why not? We'll be happy to meet Mordechai. And so the Maggid of Reb Mezrich calls and says, Reb Mordechai, please come. And Motel comes in, dressed up all nice, and he goes, yes, Rebbe. And then he walks up to Ruvain, and he goes, it's so nice to see you again. And father-in-law, and my dear wife. And all of a sudden, they realize that he's the same boy. They just didn't recognize him. And the other group is waiting, so I'll just finish the story. Basically, children, they realized there was really no reason to break the wedding off, and that they were only judging him by the clothes he wore. But now, since Reb Yisachar gave him 2,000 golden rubles, he was a rich man. He had 2,000 golden rubles. And they went back to their town, and this time they made a proper nice Jewish celebration, a proper wedding. I don't think they had to go through all the ketuvah part and all, but at least a party. They made a huge party, and they made a proper wedding this time. And Motel and Hannah remained married and lived happily ever after.